Shila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatar Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pavishta Mahabhagavat Shila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pavishta Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pavishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shar Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shah Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishya Bharata Giri Raj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Bhakti Vigna Vinashan Kari Shri Nishinga Dev ki jai. Shri Nishinga Chaturdashi ki jai. Shri Nishinga Chaturdashi Vrat Palan Kari Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Palar Maharaj ki jai. Bhaktaraj Shri Palar Maharaj ki jai. Shri Lakshmi Nishinga Dev ki jai. Shri Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Sorry, today I'm starting very late. But yeah, we'll finish up this chapter, then I'll stop this video, and then in a little while, I'll start another video, and we can read all the glories of Nrsimhadev. Okay, so, and I'm gonna just share my screen now. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad-Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya amne gauratishe namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Yam Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedu Stang Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskrityam Rangchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Vedantasta Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam Bhakta Vihina Aparada Laksha Ekshiptashtakama Ditarangamadhe Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Ito Nishingo Parato Nishingo Yato Yato Yamitato Nishingo Bahir Nishingo Hridaye Nishingo Nishringamadim Sharanam Prapadde. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat pranams, everybody, Pajuna Prabhu, Banjari Didi, Indira Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji, Haribol. All right, so as I mentioned before, I'm going to read this, finish this chapter. We're going to finish this whole story of Prithu Maharaj, and then I don't know, after maybe 15 minutes, I'll start another video and I'll start reading the glories of Nrsimhadev. Sorry, this is the latest I've started in a long time though, but luckily today we only have 5,000 words to read instead of 6,000, so hopefully we'll still finish on time. But what did we read up to yesterday? We read up to 13 to 26. Okay. So we read how Prithu's Vanaprastha life, austerities, and departure. So Prithu, he goes to the forest along with his wife. Then we read about Prithu's austerities, their purpose, and the results of those austerities. Then Prithu worships the Lord through Adhyatma Yoga. He destroys his subtle body, and he gives up his gross body. Okay, let's read from 13. Prithu gives up his gross body. In due course of time, Prithu fixes his mind firmly upon Lord Krishna, being completely situated on the Brahmabhuta platform. Being completely situated in the Brahmabhuta platform, he gave up his gross body. Note, Prithu, being a pure devotee and a Shaktivesh avatar, did not have material subtle and gross bodies. Also, Prithu, out of his great humility, did not consider himself a great devotee, and hence meditated on destroying his subtle body. This is mentioned in order to preserve the mentality of materialists. Amongst the Lord's forms, Ram does not give up his body, and among the devotees, Dhruva does not give up his body. Interesting. Okay, so sitting in the Muktasan, Prithu raised his life air from the Muladhara chakra, from the anus, to the Swadhisthana chakra, the navel, the Manipurak chakra, the abdomen, Anahata chakra, the heart, Vishuddhi chakra, the throat, and the Agya chakra, between two eyebrows. From there he raised the air to the Brahmarandra, and without desire, merged his life air with the totality of air. He merged the remaining gross elements of his body into the totality of those gross elements. Then he merged earth into water, into fire, into air, and then into sky. He then merged the mind into the senses, and the senses into the sense objects into Ahankar, and Ahankar into the Mahat Tattva, all the elements. He placed the Mahat Tattva into Prakriti and then gave up Prakriti, situated beside him by the power of Jnana and Vairagya, and by the force of Bhakti. In this way, being already situated in his Swarup, in Krishna consciousness, he gave up his body. Arci performs the funeral rites of Prithu and enters the fire. Arci voluntarily followed Prithu into the forest and touched her lotus feet to the ground, despite being a delicate queen, unsuited to austerities. Though she became thin by performing austerities like sages, she did not feel any pain because she derived pleasure in serving her husband. Seeing her merciful husband's body without life symptoms, she lamented for a little while, and then placed the body on a funeral pyre. She executed all the necessary rituals and offered respects to the demigods. She then circumambulated the fire 3 times and entered its flames while meditating on the lotus feet of her husband. The demigods' wives praise Arci. Seeing this amazing act, thousands of wives of the demigods, along with their husbands, began glorifying Arci. The demigods played instruments, and their wives showered flowers on the funeral pyre. They spoke, "All glories to Queen Arci. She served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly as Lakshmi serves Vishnu. That must be her traveling in the sky. She is still following her husband upward. Arci has surpassed us in inconceivable actions though an inhabitant of the earth." Link. We also desire to achieve such good fortune by taking human births. So that's where we read up to yesterday. And there's a picture that Indira Mataji sent us of this incident. Where is it? Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. Here. See, there's the fire, and there's the flowers, demigods, wives, and all the demigods. And there's Prithu Maharaj and Arci. All right, so let's continue on. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Oops, not 22, we're on 23. Okay, verse 26. Here. Shaishanunam brajaturdvam anuvainyam patim sati Pashyatasman atityarchir durvibhavena karmana. The wives of the demigods continued, "Just see how this chaste lady Arci, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward as far as we can see." Oh wait, I already read this one. We're going to 27. Tesham durapam kim tvanyam Martyanam Bhagavat Padam Puvilola Yushoyevai Naishkarmyam Sadayantuta. In this material world, every human being has a short span of life, but those who are engaged in devotional service go back home, back to Godhead, for they are actually on the path of liberation. For such persons, there is nothing which is not available. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 9.33, Lord Krishna says, "Anityam asukam lokam imam prapya bhajasvam mam." The Lord here declares that this material world is full of miseries, asukam, and at the same time it's very flickering, anityam. Therefore, one's only duty is to engage himself in devotional service. This is the best end to which human life can be put. Those devotees who are constantly engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord achieve not only material benefits, but also all spiritual benefits, for at the end of life they go back home, back to Godhead. Their destination is described in this verse as Bhagavat Padam. The word Padam means abode, and Bhagavat means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the destination of the devotees is the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the word Naishkarmyam, which means transcendental knowledge, is also significant. Unless one comes to the platform of transcendental knowledge and offers devotional service to the Lord, one is not perfect. Generally, the processes of Jnana, Yoga, and Karma are executed life after life before one gets a chance to render pure devotional service to the Lord. This chance is given by the grace of a pure devotee, and it is in this way only that one can actually attain liberation. In the context of this narration, the wives of the demigods repented because although they had the opportunity of a birth in a higher planetary system, a lifetime spanning millions of years, and all material comforts, they were not as fortunate as Prithu Maharaj and his wife, who were actually surpassing them. In other words, Prithu Maharaj and his wife scorned promotion to the higher planetary systems and even to Brahmaloka, because the position which they were attaining was incomparable. In Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the Lord affirms, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avatirnarjuna. From the highest planet in the material world to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. In other words, even if one goes to the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he has to return to the miseries of birth and death. In the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita 9:21, Lord Krishna also asserts, Tetang bhuktva swargam lokam vishalam, shine punye martya lokam vishanti. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, after exhausting the results of pious activities, one has to come again to the lower planetary systems and begin a new chapter of pious activities. It is therefore said in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.5.12, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhavavarjitam. The path of liberation is not at all secure unless one attains the devotional service of the Lord. Even if one is promoted to the impersonal Brahmajyoti, he runs every chance of falling down into this material world. If it is possible to fall down from the Brahmajyoti, which is beyond the higher planetary systems in this material world, then what can be said of the ordinary yogis and karmis who can only be elevated to the higher material planets? Thus, the wives of the denizens of the higher planetary systems did not very much appreciate the results of karma, gyan, and yoga. I'm just checking the internet connection's okay. Looks like it. All right. Is there any comments? And Dandavat pranams Madhavi Didi. Haribo. Savanchita Bhatatmadruk Krichrena Mahata Bhuvi Labdva Pavargyamanusham Vishayeshu Vishajate. Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. He must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. Alright, I just set up my mobile hotspot, and it seems to be good enough for now. Tell me, is this connection okay? I'm just gonna screen it. Oh wait, and Pajumna said it froze at what point? Killers of their own self, right? Let me just. Okay. So, any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining the form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult tasks of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. Purport. In this material world, people are engaged in different activities simply to achieve a little success and sense gratification. The karmis are engaged in performing very difficult activities, and thus they open gigantic factories, build huge cities, make big scientific discoveries, etc. In other words, they are engaged in performing very costly sacrifices in order to be promoted to the higher planetary systems. Similarly, yogis are engaged in achieving a similar goal by accepting the tedious practices of mystic yoga. Jnanis are engaged in philosophical speculation in order to gain release from the clutches of material nature. In these ways, everyone is engaged in performing very difficult tasks simply for the gratification of the senses. All of these are considered to be engaged in sense gratificatory activities, or vishaya, because they all demand some facility for material existence. Actually, the results of such activities are temporary, as Krishna himself proclaims in Bhagavad Gita 7.23, Antavattu phalam tesham. The fruits of those who worship the demigods are limited and temporary. Thus the fruits of the activities of the yogis, karmis, and jnanis are ephemeral. What's the word ephemeral mean again? It's temporary, but what is it? Lasting for a very short time. Moreover, Krishna says, Tad bhavat delpamedasam. They are simply meant for men of small intelligence. The power is back. Should I switch over to my... I'm going to switch over to the Wi-Fi, huh? Let me just finish this purport and then I'll switch over. The karmis flatly state... the word vishaya denotes sense gratification. The karmis flatly states that they want sense gratification. The yogis also want sense gratification, but they want it to a higher degree. It is their desire to show some miraculous results through the practice of yoga. Thus they strive very hard to achieve success in becoming smaller than the smallest, or greater than the greatest, or in creating a planet like Earth, or as scientists by inventing so many wonderful machines. Similarly, the jnanis are also engaged in sense gratification, for they are simply interested in becoming one with the Supreme. Thus the aim of all these activities is sense gratification to a higher or lower degree. The bhaktas, however, are not interested in sense gratificatory practices. They are simply satisfied to get an opportunity to serve the Lord. Although they are satisfied in any condition, there is nothing they cannot obtain, because they are purely engaged in the service of the Lord. Okay, I'm switching over to my Wi-Fi. Ephemeral. The wives of the demigods condemn the performers of sense gratificatory activities as vanchita, cheated. Those so engaged are actually killing themselves, as stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11:20-17. Nrideya madhyam sulabham sudurlabham plavam sukalpa gurukarnadharam mayanukulena nabhasvateritam puman bhavabdim nataret sa atmaha. When one wants to cross a large ocean, he requires a strong boat. It is said that this human form of life is a good boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. In the human form of life, one can obtain the guidance of a good navigator, the spiritual master. One also gets a favorable wind by the mercy of Krishna, and that wind is the instructions of Krishna. The human body is the boat, the instructions of the Lord are the favorable winds, and the spiritual master is the navigator. The spiritual master knows well how to adjust the sails to catch the winds favorably and steer the boats to its destination. If, however, one does not take advantage of this opportunity, one wastes the human form of life. Wasting time and life in this way is the same as committing suicide. The word labdva pavargyam is significant in this verse, because according to Jiva Goswami, apavargyam, or the path of liberation, does not refer to merging into the impersonal Brahman, but to salokyadi siddhi, which means attaining the very planet where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. There are 5 kinds of liberation, and one is called sayuja mukti, or merging into the existence of the Supreme, or the impersonal Brahman effulgence. However, since there is a chance of falling down again into the material sky from the Brahman effulgence, Srila Jiva Goswami advises that in this human form of life, one's only aim should be to go back home, back to Godhead. The words sa vanchita indicate that once a person has obtained the human form of life, he is actually cheated if he does not make preparations to go back home, back to Godhead. The position of all non-devotees who are not interested in going back home, back to Godhead, is very much lamentable, for the human form of life is meant for executing devotional service and nothing else. Maitreya uvacha stuvatishvamarastrīshu patilokam gatabadu yamva atma vidam duryo vainya prapachyutashaya. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking. My dear Vidura, when the wives of the denizens of heaven were thus talking amongst themselves, Queen Arci reached the planet which her husband, Maharaj Prithu, the topmost self-realized soul, had attained. Purport. According to Vedic scriptures, a woman who dies with her husband or enters into fire in which her husband is burning also enters the same planet her husband attains. In this material world, there is a planet known as Pati Loka, just as there is a planet known as Pitri Loka. But in this verse, the word Pati Loka does not refer to any planet within this material universe, for Prithu Maharaj, being topmost amongst self-realized souls, certainly returned home back to Godhead, and attained one of the Vaikuntha planets. Queen Arci also entered Pati Loka, but this planet is not in the material universe, for she actually entered the planet which her husband attained. In the material world also, when a woman dies with her husband, she again unites with him in the next birth. Similarly, Maharaj Prithu and Queen Arci united in the Vaikuntha planets. In the Vaikuntha planets, there are husbands and wives, but there is no question of their giving birth to children or having sex life. In the Vaikuntha planets, both husbands and wives are extraordinarily beautiful, and they are attracted to one another, but they do not enjoy sex life. Indeed, they consider sex not to be very relishable, because both husband and wife are always absorbed in Krishna consciousness and in glorifying and chanting the glories of the Lord. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, a husband and wife can turn the home into a place as good as Vaikuntha, even while in this material world. Being absorbed in Krishna consciousness, even in this world, husband and wife can live in Vaikuntha simply by installing the deity of the Lord within the home and serving the deity according to the directions of the Shastras. In this way, they will never feel the sex urge. That is the test of advancement in devotional service. One who is advanced in devotional service is never attracted by sex life, and as soon as one becomes detached from sex life and proportionately attached to the service of the Lord, he actually experiences living in the Vaikuntha planets. In the ultimate issue, there is actually no material world, but when one forgets the service of the Lord and engages himself in the service of his senses, he is said to be living in the material world. Itam bhutanubhavoso pritusa bhagavatama kirtitam tasya charitam uddama charitasyate. Maitreya continued. Just wanted to make sure it's still working. Maitreya continued. The greatest of all devotees, Maharaj Prithu, was very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus I have described him to you as far as possible. Purport. In this verse, the word Bhagavatama is very significant. For the word Bhagavat is used especially to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the word Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the word Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is derived from the word Bhagavat. Sometimes, however, we see that the word Bhagavan is used for great personalities like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Narad Muni. This is the case with Prithu Maharaj, who is described here as the best of Bhagavans, or the best of the Lords. A person could be so addressed only if he is a great personality who exhibits extraordinary and uncommon features, or who attains the greatest goal after his disappearance, or who knows the difference between knowledge and ignorance. In other words, the word Bhagavan should not be used for ordinary persons. Ya idam sumahat punyam shraddhaya vahita patet shravayet shrinuyadvapi saprito padavim iyat. Any person who describes the great characteristics of King Prithu with faith and determination, whether he reads or hears of them himself or helps others to hear of them, is certain to attain the very planet which Maharaj Prithu attained. In other words, such a person also returns home to the Vaikuntha planets, back to Godhead. Purport. In the execution of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, etc. In the execution of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam, Vishnu Smaranam, is especially stressed. This means that bhakti, or devotional service, begins by hearing and chanting about Vishnu. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Vishnu Smarana. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. When we speak of Vishnu, we also refer to that which relates to Vishnu. In the Shiva Puran, Lord Shiva recommends Vishnu worship to be the topmost worship, and better than Vishnu worship is the worship of the Vaishnav or anything that is related to Vishnu. The fact is explained herein that hearing and chanting about a Vaishnav is as good as hearing and chanting about Vishnu. For Maitreya has explained that anyone who hears about Prithu Maharaj with attention also attains the planet which Prithu Maharaj attained. There is no duality between Vishnu and the Vaishnav, and this is called Advaya Gyan. A Vaishnav is as important as Vishnu, and therefore Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote in his Guru Vashtak, Shakshadharitvena samasta shastre uktastata bhavyata eva sarvi kintu prabhurya priya eva tasya vande guru shri charanarvindam. The spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord, because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and is followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari. The Supreme Vaishnava is the spiritual master, and he is none different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that sometimes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to chant the names of the gopis. Some of the Lord's students tried to advise him to chant the name of Krishna instead, but upon hearing this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very angry with his students. The controversy on this subject reached a point that after this incident, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to take sannyas because he was not taken very seriously in his grihastha ashram. The point is that since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the names of the gopis, worship of the gopis or the devotees of the Lord is as good as devotional service rendered directly to the Lord. It is also stated by the Lord himself that devotional service to his devotees is better than service offered directly to him. Sometimes the Sahajya class of devotees are interested only in Krishna's personal pastimes, to the exclusion of the activities of the devotees. This type of devotee is not on a very high level. One who sees the devotee and the Lord on the same level has further progressed. Brahmano brahmavarchasvi rajanyo jagati pati vaishya patam vidpati syat chudra satamatam iyat. If one hears of the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj and is a Brahman, he becomes perfectly qualified with Brahminical powers. If he is a Kshatriya, he becomes a king of the world. If he is a Vaishya, he becomes a master of other Vaishyas and many animals. And if he is a Shudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. Purport. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is recommended that one should become a devotee regardless of one's condition. Whether one is without desire, akama, or with desire, sakama, or whether one desires liberation, moksha kama, he is advised to worship the Supreme Lord and execute devotional service unto him. By so doing, one attains all perfection in any field of life. The process of devotional service, especially hearing and chanting, is so powerful that it can bring a person to the perfectional stage. In this verse, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras are mentioned, but here it should be understood that reference is to the Brahmin who is born in a Brahminical family, the Kshatriya who is born in a Kshatriya family, the Vaishya who is born in a Vaishya family, and a Shudra in a Shudra family. But whether one is a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, he can attain perfection simply by hearing and chanting. To take birth in a family of Brahmins is not the ultimate finishing touch. One must have the power of a Brahmin, which is called Brahma Tejas. Similarly, taking birth in a royal family is not the all in all. One must possess the power to rule the world. Similarly, taking birth as a Vaishya is not all. One must possess hundreds or thousands of animals, specifically cows, and rule over other Vaishyas, as Nanda Maharaj did in Vrindavan. Nanda Maharaj was a Vaishya who possessed 900,000 cows and ruled over many cowherd men and boys. A person who is born in a Shudra family can become greater than a Brahmin simply by accepting devotional service and giving oral reception to the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. Trikritva idamakarnya naronaryatavadrita apraja suprajatama nirdhano dhanavatama. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. Anyone who, with great respect, hears this narration of Maharaj Prithu will become the father of many children if he is without children, and will become the richest of men if he is without money. Alright, so if you want to have children, watch this, read this story, or if you want to become the richest of men. Purport. Materialistic persons who are very fond of money and great families worship different demigods to attain their desires, especially goddess Durga, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Such materialistic persons are called Shri Aishwarya Prajapsava. Shri means beauty, Aishwarya means riches, Praja means children, and ipsava means desiring. As described in the second canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, one has to worship various demigods for different types of benedictions. However, here it is indicated that simply by hearing of the life and character of Maharaj Prithu, one can have both riches and children in enormous quantities. One simply has to read and understand the history, the life and activities of Prithu Maharaj. It is advised that one read them at least 3 times. Those who are materially afflicted will so benefit by hearing of the Supreme Lord and His devotees. They'll become so benefited that they do not need to go to any demigod. The word suprajatama, surrounded by many children, is very significant in this verse. For one may have many children, but may not have any qualified children. Here, however, it is stated, suprajatama. Su means very, like very good. So that it is stated suprajatama, that all the children thus attained would be qualified in education, wealth, beauty, and strength. Everything complete. Aspashta kirtisu yasha murko bhavati pandita idam swastayam ayanam pungsam amangalya nivaranam. Also, one who hears this narration 3 times will become very reputable if he is not recognized in society, and he will become a great scholar if he is illiterate. In other words, hearing of the narrations of Prithu Maharaj is so auspicious that it drives away all bad luck. Purport. In the material world, everyone wants some profit, some adoration, and some reputation. By associating in different ways with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or His devotee, one can very easily become opulent in every respect. Even if one is not known or recognized by society, he becomes very famous and important if he takes to devotional service and preaching. As far as education is concerned, one can become recognized in society as a great learned scholar simply by hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, wherein the pastimes of the Lord and His devotees are described. This material world is full of dangers at every step, but a devotee has no fear because devotional service is so auspicious that it automatically counteracts all kinds of bad luck. Since hearing about Prithu Maharaj is one of the items of devotional service, Shravanam, naturally hearing about him brings all good fortune. And how many verses are here? 39. Okay. 4 more verses. Dhanyam yashasyam ayushyam svargyam kali malapaham dharmartha kama mokshanam samyak siddhim abhipsubhi shraddhayaitar anushravyam chaturnyam karanam param. By hearing the narration of Prithu Maharaj, one can become great, increase his duration of life, gain promotion to the heavenly planets, and counteract the contaminations of this age of Kali. In addition, one can promote the causes of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Therefore, from all sides, it is advisable for a materialistic person who is interested in such things to read and hear the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj. Purport. By reading and hearing the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj, one naturally becomes a devotee, and as soon as one becomes a devotee, his material desires automatically become fulfilled. Therefore, it is recommended in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 2.3.10, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. If a person wants to return home, back to Godhead, or wants to become a pure devotee, akama, or wants some material prosperity, sakama or sarva kama, or wants to merge into the existence of the Supreme Brahman effulgence, moksha kama, he is recommended to take to the path of devotional service and hear and chant of Lord Vishnu or of his devotee. This is the sum and substance of all Vedic literatures. Vedaishcha sarvar aham eva vedya. Bhagavad Gita 15:15. The purpose of Vedic knowledge is to understand Krishna and his devotees. Whenever we speak of Krishna, we refer to his devotees also, for he is not alone. He is never nirvishesh or shunya, without variety or zero. Krishna is full of variety, and as soon as Krishna is present, there cannot be any question of void. Vijaya bhimukho raja shrutavaitar abhiyatiyan paling tasmai harantyagre rajana pritaveyata. If a king who is desirous of attaining victory and ruling power chants the narration of Prithu Maharaj 3 times before going forth on his chariot, all subordinate kings will automatically render all kinds of taxes unto him, as they rendered them unto Maharaj Prithu, simply upon his order. Purport. Since the Kshatriya king naturally desires to rule the world, he wishes to make all other kings subordinate to him. This was also the position many years ago when Prithu Maharaj was ruling over the earth. At that time, he was the only emperor on this planet. Even 5,000 years ago, Maharaj Yudhishthir and Maharaj Parikshit were the sole emperors of this planet. Sometimes the subordinate kings rebelled, and it was necessary for the emperor to go and chastise them. This process of chanting the narrations of the life and character of Prithu Maharaj is recommended for conquering kings if they want to fulfill their desire to rule the world. Muktanya Sangha-Bhagavat Tamalam Bhaktimudvahan Vainyasa Charitam Punyam Shrunuyat Travayet Patet. A pure devotee who is executing the different processes of devotional service may be situated in the transcendental position, being completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But even he, while discharging devotional service, must hear, read, and induce others to hear about the character and life of Prithu Maharaj. Purport. There is a type of neophyte devotee who is very anxious to hear about the pastimes of the Lord, especially the Ras Lila chapters in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Such a devotee should know by this instruction that the pastimes of Prithu Maharaj are none different from the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An ideal king, Prithu Maharaj, exhibited all talents in showing how to rule the citizens, how to educate them, how to develop the state economically, how to fight enemies, how to perform great sacrifices, etc. Thus it is recommended for the Sahajya, or the neophyte devotee, to hear, chant, and get others to hear about the activities of Prithu Maharaj, even though one may think himself to be in a transcendental position of advanced devotional service. Vaichitra viryabhihitam mahan mahatma suchakam asmin krityam ati martyam partavim gatimapnuyat. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, I have as far as possible spoken the narrations of Prithu Maharaj, which enrich one's devotional attitude. Whoever takes advantage of these benefits also goes back home, back to Godhead, like Maharaj Prithu." Purport. The word Shravayet, mentioned in a previous verse, indicates that one should not only read for himself, but should also induce others to read and hear. That is called preaching. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended this practice. Jare deko tare koho, Krishna Upadesh. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 7:128. Whomever you meet, simply talk with him about the instructions given by Krishna, or tell them of narrations about Krishna. Prithu Maharaj's history of devotional service is as potent as the narrations about the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should not make distinctions between the pastimes of the Lord and the activities of Prithu Maharaj. And whenever it is possible, a devotee should attempt to induce others to hear about Prithu Maharaj. One should not only read of his pastimes for one's own benefit, but should induce others to read and hear about them also. In this way, everyone can be benefited. Okay, this is where we're ending with this verse. Anudinam idam adarina shrinvan Prithu charitam pratayan vimukta sangha Bhagavati bhava sindhu pade Sacha nipunam labate ratim manusha. Whoever, with great reverence and adoration, regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Maharaj Prithu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which one can cross the ocean of nescience. Purport. The word Bhava Sindhu Pota Pade is significant in this verse. The lotus feet of the Lord are known as Mahat Padam. This means that the total source of material existence rests on the lotus feet of the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham Sarvasva Prabhavo, everything is emanating from Him. This cosmic manifestation, which is compared to an ocean of nescience, is also resting on the lotus feet of the Lord. As such, this great ocean of nescience is minimized by a person who is a pure devotee. One who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord need not cross over the ocean, for he has already crossed it by virtue of his position at the Lord's lotus feet. By hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord or the Lord's devotee, one can become firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. This position can also be achieved very easily by narrating the history of the life of Prithu Maharaj regularly every day. The word Vimukta Sangha is also significant in this connection. Because we associate with the three qualities of material nature, our position in this material world is full of dangers. But when we engage in the devotional service of the Lord by the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam, we immediately become Vimukta Sangha, are liberated. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 23rd chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home. Jai Prithu Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Arci Devi ki Jai. Arci Maharani ki Jai. All right, it's now 8:01, ended perfect time, well, 1 minute late. Hey, my screen's black. Has it been black this whole time? Anyhow, at least we got to the end. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Aito Nishinga, Parato Nishinga, Yato Yamitato Nishinga, Ito Nishinga, Parato Nishinga, Yato Yamitato Nishinga, Bahir Nishinga, Hridaye Nishinga, Nishinga Mahadev Sharanam Prapade, Bahir Nishinga, Hridaye Nishinga, Nishinga Mahadev Sharanam Prapade, Jai Nishinga Dev Jaya, Nishinga Dev, Jaya Nishinga Dev, Jaya Bhakta Pralaya, Jaya Bhakta Pralaya, Jaya Bhakta Pralaya, Jai Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. And just letting you know, right now it is 8 a.m. here, and I will start reading about Nrsingadev at 9 a.m., so in 1 hour from now. I'll just read some different articles by, I think maybe I'll start with articles by my Gurudev. And if I don't come on at 9 a.m., then that might mean that the storm has started, because there's a big tufan coming right now. It has a name, I don't know what the name is. But once that happens, then all the power and everything's going to be down, and lots of times even the phone lines go down when it's like really intense. So, will I sing the song that I posted? Rup Manjari's asking. Yes, I will definitely sing that, for sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody here is not on the Gaudiya Kirtan mailing list. Let me know. Oh no, yeah, let me know, and I can send you the song that I sent out on the. Actually, I should just post it on Facebook. I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna post it on Facebook. Then everybody has the words. All right. Oh wait, I haven't done Jaidwani yet. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shala Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shala Gurudev Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shala Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shala Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shala Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai Shri Sarup Damadai Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shad Vrinda Ki Jai Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund Ki Jai Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya Ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Vigna Vinasang Kari Shri Bhagavan Nrsingadev Ki Jai Shri Nrsinga Chaturdashi Ki Jai Shri Prahlad Bhakta Pravar Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Lakshmi Nrsinga Ki Jai Shri Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaurav Shri Prithu Maharaja Ki Jai Shri Arci Maharani Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaurav Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. And for those of you who weren't able to start anything on Akshay Tritiya, or you wished you started, or you messed up on Akshay Tritiya, it was something that you started on Akshay Tritiya, Well, Nisringa Chaturdashi is a day like Akshay Tritiya, which is very good to begin anything. These 2 days of the year, Akshay Tritiya and Nisringa Chaturdashi, those are the days you should start anything. So, yeah, just wanted to give that little note. All right. Dandavat pranams. Haribol. So see you in 50 minutes from now, or a little bit over 50 minutes from now, if you want to read about Nisringa Dev with me. All right, Haribol. Dandavat pranams, Santira Mataji, Pajumna Prabhu, Rup Manjari, and everybody else.